Hi, welcome to another video of how to play. Today we're going to talk about the setup and the mechanics and also the end game of Idus Martii, a game by Michael Burke. This game is for 5 to 8 players, so you can see that it's quite a party game. Age is 12 and up, and the duration of the game is around 15 minutes. What is Idus Martii? Well, Idus Martii is Latin for the Ides of March, and in this game, players are part of the Roman Senate, and they are entangled in a secret conspiracy to try and end the Caesar's life. During the game, each player will have to choose one of the factions and then find the other players in the table that belong to that faction, okay? To try and tip the balance firmly in the favor of the chosen faction, okay? What are these three factions? These three factions are the loyalists, okay? So they will try and vote for the Caesar to stay alive. There are another opposing faction is the traitors, so they will try and vote for the assassination of the Caesar. And we have a third faction, which we call the merchants, and these guys, they are happy as the things as they are now, and they just want to maintain the status quo. So they will try to balance the two opposing factions as much as possible, okay? How do we set up the game? Well, let's start with the setup. It's very easy. We set apart as many pairs of loyalist faction cards and traitor faction cards as there are players -1, okay? And then we add the two merchants, okay? In any game, it doesn't matter how many players there will be only 2 faction cards that are of the merchant faction, okay? Then we deal 2 faction cards face down to each player from that deck that we just made. Each player can obviously look at the 2 faction cards that they have, but they cannot show it to the other players, okay? Then we set aside the vote cards, which are those ones, as you know, each one related to a different faction, okay? We put the suffragum here. This card will register the votes that the players will cast throughout the game, okay? And each faction will count their votes using their corresponding token. So the loyalists use the wreath and the traitors use the sword, okay? And we also have the roll cards, which are the consul, the praetor, and there's 2 edile rolls, okay? We leave them aside. And then to choose the starting player, what we recommend is that the starting player is the one who has held a knife most recently, okay? That player will take the consul roll, okay? And that will make to mark the rounds, okay? Because this game is played over 2 rounds, okay? Each round has as many turns as there are players. Once the first round is over, the second round starts. And once the second round is over, that is when the starting player takes the consul card for the 3rd time. You will see that in a bit. Then we proceed to the end game. How does the end game work? The game ends immediately when one of the conditions is met. One of these 2 conditions that I'm going to talk about now. A possibility is a failed conspiracy. That happens, okay, when one of the vote markers surpass the position that it's indicated in the suffragum card for that number of players. So let's say if we're playing with 5 players, if any of the 2 factions gets 14 or more points, then that faction automatically loses because they've been exposed by the Caesar, okay? Then all players reveal their faction cards, and the players that belong to the other faction will win the game, okay? Then the other option is what we call the Ides of March, okay? This is what we were saying before, when the starting player receives the consul card for the 3rd time. In this case, we will go and look at the suffragum card, okay? If any of the 2 factions has 2 or more points than the other faction, like in this case, for example, the loyalists have 10 and the traitors have 7, then that faction has been successful in getting all the support that they needed, and that faction wins. Okay, players obviously reveal their faction card to see which team, let's say, wins. Okay, in case that they are tied or with a difference of 1 point, like this, then the merchant faction wins. Okay, so as you can see, you can either you win if the opposing faction exceeds the threshold of votes for the number of players, or if that doesn't happen at the end of the game, if your faction has 2 more votes than the other faction, you win, and otherwise the merchants will win. Okay, so and how do we that we've done the end of the game? Let's go into how to play the game. Okay, during the first round, each turn is composed of the following steps. First step is voting. It's a deal. Okay, but what we're going to do on the first round is that the first player takes the console. Okay, keeps it in front of them. Then the second player gets the Praetor, and then the 2 next players get the Edels. Okay, the Edels are the guys, basically, to explain a little bit the roles, like given a very brief outlook. The console decides the roles, but that's just only on the second round, and in both rounds it's a bit to keep track of the turn order. Then the Praetor will have a veto on the votings, and the Edels are the players that will vote. Okay, so on the first step of each turn, each Edel will take a pair of votes. On the first round, they will only use a loyalist vote and a traitor vote. Okay, they take those into their hands and choose one of them and secretly place it in front of them face down. Okay, let's say this could be my vote. It's a green card. Okay, it's a loyalist vote. Then the second step is the veto step. That's where the Praetor comes in. The player who is the Praetor, that has that role of the Praetor for that turn, will, without looking at the 2 cast votes, will take one of them and secretly look at it. Okay, if the Praetor wishes, they can force the Edel that placed that vote to exchange the current vote with the card that they have in their hand. So let's say that I played my loyalist vote. If the Praetor looks it up, chooses that card and not the other Edel's card, they look at it and they say, okay, change it. I would have to secretly, always, we never reveal the card to the other players, put it back in my hand and then substitute it for the other card, which will be a traitor vote. Okay, then we proceed to the third step of the turn. The console picks up the final vote cards, so those that have remained in the table after the Praetor having vetoed it or not, as they deem appropriate. Then they shuffle those cards and reveal them to the players. Okay, they have to shuffle so no player can see what Edel voted, what type of vote. No? And then the console updates the score on the suffragan card. For each vote, advance the matching faction token 1 space. Okay, remember that if we cross the threshold, then we proceed to end game directly. Okay, and lastly, last part of the turn is the end of the turn. In this one, the console secretly chooses and discards one of their faction cards. Okay, by doing so, they effectively choose a side, which will be relevant for the end of the game, as we know. Then the starting player, it's very important to note that the starting player of the game, so on the first turn of the first round, ignores this rule. Okay, they will do it on the first turn of the second round. Okay, and after doing so, the console passes each player that has a card, a roll card. So the console, the Praetor, and the 2 Edels, they pass their card to the player to the left. So the Praetor becomes the console, the first idle becomes a predator, and so on. Okay, and then we start a new turn. So we continue doing this until the console card reaches the starting player for the second time. Okay, because the first player started with the console. Then we start the second round. Okay, and we follow exactly the same steps as in the first round, but with the following additions. On the voting phase, instead of having the roles assigned directly, what we do is that the console distributes the other three roles as they see fit. Okay, but with the restriction that players can't take the same role 2 turns in a row. Okay, there's an exception to this rule when there's only 5 players playing, but it's okay. And then also each edil on the voting phase, they will take a traitor vote, they will take a loyalist vote, and they will take a neutral vote. Okay, the vote that is corresponding to the merchant faction. Okay, and we'll see in the next step of the turn how this card works. Okay, well, in scoring. On the second phase of the turn, on the veto phase, if the Praetor inspects and finds a yellow card, so when he chooses the vote that he wants to look at, it turned out that that was a yellow vote, okay, the vote corresponding to the merchant faction, they must reveal it. Okay, so that's a difference from the other two types of votes. And then the matching edil can swap it face down for any of the remaining vote cards in their hand. So basically, if I put this as my vote, and then the edil looks at it, they are forced to reveal it, and then I can play face down either my loyalist or my traitor vote. This is very important because then nobody can know, not even the Praetor, nobody knows what have I voted. Okay. On the third step, the change is that same. The loyalist cards add 1 to the score of the loyalist faction. The traitor votes add 1 to the scoring of the traitor faction. And if there were any yellow votes there, they don't advance any of the other markers. Okay, it's basically a blank vote. Okay, and then at the end of the turn, okay, the console will discard one of the remaining faction cards, but only the first player does this in the second round. Okay, each of the other players have discarded one of the roles during the first round, and the console will do that on the first turn of the second round. Okay, and then in the second round we only pass to the left the console card, because we remember that at the start of each turn the console distributes the 3 other roles. Okay, so well, that's it. As you can see, the rules are very easy. It's a very simple light rules game, but with a clever twist on the secret identities game type of games. And I hope that you've liked the video. If you liked it, you can give us a thumbs up. If you like this type of content, we will be creating more videos of how to play of all of our games. Sorry. So if you like that, you can subscribe to our channel. And well, that's it for today, and we'll see each other in the next video.